So I want to welcome everybody and thank you for being with us today. It's really a privilege and a pleasure. I'm very excited to be leading you in this webinar on a really critical topic as we're wrapping up 2013 and entering 2014. Perfect opportunity to be talking about a very critical topic for all accounting professionals, and that's lead generation. So, it's really so there's a lot of conversation. It's a pretty hot topic these days to be talking about networking. So today, let me tell you a little bit about how we're going to be looking at networking, because there's a lot that's written about it. But today, we're going to be really looking at it from with a very fine-tooth comb. We're going to be looking through a very specific lens. We're going to be looking at not just networking, but targeted networking, where we're going to be looking at important strategies for how to find higher quality, more proactive referral sources. How you as accounting professionals can gain direct access to higher level and higher paying clients. And ways to deepen the bond with your current clients, because after all, it's not just about once you get them, now you want to keep them, and you have to deepen the bond with them, because it's a very, very competitive market. And how, with your current clients, you can network even with them so you can open the door to generating more business with them. And then we're also going to be looking at one of the most important but often pushed to the side techniques, and that's the whole area of follow-up and how you can accelerate and ensure that your new relationships are moving forward in a productive way. So we're going to be really looking at networking with quite a different focus than you've generally tended to before. Now, I think there's no doubt that in public accounting that the most, business development is crucial. We can't keep our firms and our businesses and our practices going if we're not generating continuous business, whether more business with our current clients, new business with new clients, and so on and so forth. But the most important business development activity, we can, there's a lot of hoopla around social media and all of that, but really the truth of the matter is that for accounting professionals, the most important business development activity that really pays off is really through networking. Now, many people, we've all, I'm sure most of you on the call today have done some networking or have been considering getting out there and doing more networking. But the truth is that not all networking is created equal. So what do I mean by that? Well, for accountants, lead generation is almost 100% relationship driven. I mean, after all, you are truly all about building relationships with people. You are getting into the most important part of their lives, the area of money. And so it's really all about the people, right? And you're creating very special bonds and connections. There's a very strong bond between you and the people that you're working with. You are involved in every aspect of their business lives and very often in their personal lives when you're dealing with them on a personal, individual basis. But when it comes to accountants, people don't think of accountants as people-oriented. They think of accountants like this. They're calculators and they're bean counters and more about all about, the ledger sheets, right? However, that's not really the way it truly is. And for many accountants, the prospect of getting out there and developing business and networking, it's daunting because you don't want to be, because it's so much a relationship-driven business, you don't want to seem like Sam the slick salesperson, right? Nobody wants to occur like that. And very often, people really are concerned about looking too salesy. This is really the image that most accountants cringe at. I don't want to look like this at all. And so I don't want to network because it could be sleazy. But what would it be like for you if you could, wouldn't it be great if, through your networking, you not only met really great people, but you became a magnet for the ideal clients and ideal prospects. Wouldn't that just be fabulous if you were just attracting the perfect kinds of people to you in your business? And if you were attracting great referrals, not just any referral, because we all know that getting referrals, not all referrals are created equal either. Wouldn't it be great if you were really getting ideal referrals that turned into your ideal clients? And what if your networking wasn't just getting out there and meeting people, but what if you were actually meeting the ideal, perfect decision makers for your practice? Wouldn't that be fantastic? A higher level connection base and higher caliber prospects and higher level people who actually were able to sign your engagement letters. Wouldn't that be fabulous? So I'm actually going to take a moment right now because I want to make sure that my speakers are working properly. So let me just take a little look at the settings, and I want to maybe turn it up. And if you give me just a moment, I want to make sure that the speakers are on. Okay, great. So would somebody give me a heads up? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, great. I just got the word that my speakers are working fine. All right, so let's go back to our conversation about decision makers and meeting the exact right people who are really the right people for you and your practice, the people who truly have the power to sign your engagement letters, not just people who sort of seem like that or look like the right people or have titles that can be confusing to you. Okay, so we're having a little bit of difficulty moving the slides along, so let me give it another try here. Okay, so today we're going to go and look at some of the really important networking. We're not going to just do some networking tips. Today we're going to be talking about exactly who you should be meeting, where you can go to meet these ideal people, and how you can attract the ideal leads for your practice. Right? I mean, this is really the key. It's really about how to attract the ideal people for you. Today we have quite a number of ways that we can actually meet people for our business. We can network in person, which is the traditional way, and we can network online as well. We can network in a lot of places where, hang on one second, I just want to, we can go to Facebook, we can go to LinkedIn, we can go to YouTube, we can go to Twitter. These are all places where we can access different people, but the most important thing to remember is that just because we go out there doesn't mean that we're networking in the right places. For most of us, we've been taught to network in a very hit and miss way, and that's partially why our networking has been so frustrating. Boy, we seem to be having some really challenging things. So for a lot of us, we get recommendations to go to the Chamber of Commerce or a BNI. But truthfully, these places might be great for some people, but they might not be great for our practice or our business. You have to really learn what are the right places for you and your practice. You see, if you go to places and you're networking in locations or venues or events that are attracting people who they're out there networking, but they're really not the ideal people for you and your practice, mediocre leads can turn into mediocre prospects, and mediocre prospects will turn into unprofitable clients. These are the clients who can drain you dry. And most of us have had the experience of having those drain you dry clients at one time or another. They just can make life pretty miserable. Yes, they're clients, but they can make us pretty miserable, and they're not really very profitable. So how many of you have really ever asked yourself, what's my current networking ROI? And truthfully, if you think about it, you are really looking at, you need to really be thinking about how much am I really spending on membership dues and fees each year? How much is it costing me to go to conferences? How much am I spending on, those amazing networking lunches and breakfasts where we're meeting a lot of people and we're also adding on a lot of calories and getting fatter, but we're not getting more business? How much are we spending on gas and parking, going to and from networking events, and those hotels and air travel to these conferences and seminars? On average, the research has shown that on average, professionals spend about $2,500 a year on networking. And that's just an average. Many people spend a lot more than that. So to really evaluate what your current networking ROI or return on investment is, you really have to look at it this way. Take a look at it this way. Consider this. Let's say that you've decided to join Networking Group A. And Networking Group A is going to cost you $500 a year, right? And out of that, you got a new lead, and it turns into a $5,000 a year client. Okay. So we now know that that's your return on investment from a $500 a year investment, plus maybe some lunches and some travel to and from, right? But supposing instead of spending $500, you invested $1,200 in networking conference or event B. And at that conference or event, now you're actually accessing higher level decision makers, and you find a sweet spot decision maker at your networking event. At event B, and that decision maker engages you and becomes a $30,000 a year client. When you're considering where you should be making your investment in networking, most people would opt for the $500 a year investment, wouldn't they? But look at how it can actually be much more costly to choose a cheaper networking decision than it would be to actually spend a little more. In fact, more than double. But look at how it's 600 times the payoff. Most of us would not be looking at this because we're not really evaluating what our networking return on investment is. We just say, gee, $500 a year, that's an awful lot of money to be spending on networking. But consider the return on investment. So how can you enhance relationships with higher quality referral sources? How can you connect directly with ideal decision makers and ideal prospective clients? How can you be more confident and effective in building circles of influence with the right people? How could you increase your lead generation return on investment from your networking? How do you go to the right places so that you can do this? So before we learn how to do that, I want to share with you some of the real big pitfalls that most accountants fall into when you're making your decisions about your networking and the networking activities that you're doing. And then we can go on to share the top solutions that you can implement to prevent and even eradicate these mistakes so that we can help you get in front of and build rapport with the highest level decision makers possible so that you can gain the confidence to what I call network up, to network with the highest level people that's right for you and your practice, and how you can actually take those, you can convert those business cards into great business relationships and ideal leads. That's really the key, conversion. Without conversion, you got nothing. Now, most professionals are walking around looking at the prospect of networking, and this is what it really feels like. It's so daunting. It's actually, most people would actually, they would rather have a tooth pulled than go to a networking event and talk to strangers. And I've actually, I interviewed a whole bunch of CEOs about this, and they themselves felt uncomfortable walking into a room full of strangers. It's very daunting. Sometimes it feels like you're just about to fall off the cliff because you don't know exactly where to begin to really alter and transform your networking strategy. So, Jessica?
Hi, Nancy.
Would you like to share a question for our attendees?
I will. I'm going to put it up on the screen and have you read through it because I'm scared that I may still be echoing, okay?
Okay, no problem. Okay, so networking, just answer this question. Let me just close this down for 1 second. Let's see. Hang on just 1 second. I need to click off of screen share in order to do this.
Oh, I have it up for you, Nancy.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It's the question of the knit.
Hang on 1 second, because I can't see that screen.
That's okay. I'm going to close the poll out here and just.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks so much.
And Nancy, since you can hear me,
Yeah.
54% were yes, 18% were no, and 26% were no, but they would like it.
Say that again. What was the last thing that you said?
26% were no, but they would like one.
Great. Okay, great. Okay, terrific. So, what I would really like you to think about, most of you tell me when I talk to my clients and my colleagues, my accounting professional clients and colleagues, when I ask you why networking hasn't worked for you, it's because you're too busy, or you don't meet the right kinds of prospects, or some of you are very frustrated that you're not getting reciprocal referrals, understandable, or this is the real big one. A lot of times you're experiencing frustration because you don't have the time you're going to the networking events, but then you don't have time to follow up. All of these are, they're valid, but they're not going to change anything for you because being too busy for smarter networking really won't get you the business. The real key here is how to put a new methodology in place, whether you're busy with your clients or not, because every service professional is dealing with the challenge of getting the clients and then servicing the clients. We're all really busy. We've got to find a way of putting smart networking into place. And that is why networking in and of itself really will be, sometimes it's a time sucker as opposed to a business builder. That's why smarter networking and strategic networking or targeted networking is really why we're going to be looking at it from a very different angle. Networking versus targeted networking will make all the difference in the world to you when you are looking at your networking return on investment and your time return on investment. Another key factor. Very, very important. So the first mistake that accounting professionals are making is that you're networking, but you're going to the wrong groups, or you are attending the wrong venues. And if you were to shift out of that, your networking results would alter. The second mistake is that you're very often networking at the same level or down or laterally, or you're versus networking up. So let me give you an example of this. I often ask my clients and my colleagues in the accounting world, where are you networking now? And very often they'll tell me they belong to accounting associations and CPA associations. And so I said, well, so basically what you're saying is you're networking with other accountants. Yes, that's the answer. Okay, so that's wonderful. You definitely want to be well known and recognized in your field. I get that. However, think about this. If you're networking with other accountants, unless you can cross-refer to each other, you're basically networking laterally. And sometimes you're even networking at lower levels. Another factor here is that some people are going to networking venues where they're not necessarily networking with other accountants. However, you're networking in sort of what I call safe networking, where it's comfortable to be meeting people in smaller companies or smaller businesses because it's either less expensive to network there or you feel comfortable there, but you're not really meeting the people at the level that you really want. They're not the decision makers. They're not in companies that are big enough for you to warrant working with in your practice or in the practice that you want to develop. So you're networking laterally or down versus networking in locations or in venues or with groups where you're actually meeting bigger and better decision makers. Because remember, our purpose today is not only to be generating leads, but bigger and better leads, right? That was our whole purpose for our networking conversation today. Mistake number 3 is not exactly knowing how to break the ice with new people. Very important. You go to the networking event. I watch this often. And I watch people in there just hugging the walls. Entering a room full of strangers is incredibly scary. Nobody likes it. Nobody knows what to say, which is one of the reasons that I actually I had to create a tip sheet for my clients and my friends and my colleagues and for myself. And so I created this tip sheet called the 55 Great Icebreaker Questions, and you can get it on my website. And I'll share about that later. so that I give people a menu about open-ended questions that they can use to break the ice with new people and open rapport-building dialogue. That's the key. How to create a relationship right from the get-go with new people. You want to have conversations that are opening. You want to open the dialogue. But as soon as you break the ice, you then have to be really, most people don't really listen. You're looking around the room, you're thinking about what you're going to say, so that's another mistake. You don't know how to break the ice, and then once you do break the ice, you're not really listening. Another error. Mistake number 4 is, I mentioned this before, it's poor or even non-existent follow-up. What's the point of going to even the greatest networking events and not following up? And it's really interesting because if people really knew what to do in their follow-up, I think that they would do it more frequently, but they are sort of stuck. So I think we really need to think about, what is it actually going to take for really improving the follow-up? I'm going to share about that in a moment, so stand by. The 5th mistake is, okay, now you've been to even the best networking events, right? And now what happens? What should you do after the networking event? And even after your first follow-up, what happens after the networking to build the relationship? How do you do that? We need to be able to bridge these conversations from the first opener into real relationship development. That is a very open-ended thought process, and we need some ideas for how to really cultivate the rapport and the relationship. So a lot of people talk about building relationships, but they have no real understanding about what it does take to build those relationships. So I'm now going to give you the 5 key ingredients to the secret sauce of building rapport, confidence, and relationships with your ideal contacts and colleagues. Secret sauce ingredient number 1. If you want to figure out where to go to meet the right people, you have to have an ideal client profile. You've got to sit down and think about exactly who is my ideal client. A lot of times I'll ask people, well, who's your ideal client? And they'll say to me, anybody who. Right away when they say anybody who, I know that they have not sat down and created an ideal client profile. They're considering themselves what I call generalists, and the reason for that is because they're concerned that they're going to lose out on business. But not in truth. I know it's a counterintuitive process, but in truth, it is actually more productive for you to be creating an ideal client profile so that you can research the ideal networking venues and groups for you and your practice. Once you know who you want to meet, you can then research the right events. The second ingredient in your secret sauce is confidence, self-confidence in talking to bigger cheeses or decision makers. Oh my goodness, this is a really, really big one. This is such an important one. I created an entire program around networking, and it was self-confidence was such a big missing for people. And they were so concerned about their level of self-confidence that I literally created a visualization recording to help them build self-confidence when they went to new networking events in order for them to feel comfortable in talking to bigger cheeses and decision makers. That is how important self-confidence is. Ingredient number 3 is how to become a skilled icebreaker, how you can build rapport easily, put people at ease. You are the one that needs to learn how to put people at ease, and how you can do this more rapidly and more immediately when you go to the right networking events, right? You want to put people at ease. Ingredient number 4, follow-up mastery. So before I mentioned that very often people don't have a follow-up, they don't follow up at all or very infrequently, you have to have a follow-up system. This is what is essential is for you to be having a consistent, qualified, and timely method of following up with your key new connections. Otherwise, you're going to networking, and without the follow-up in a consistent, qualified, and timely way, you are pretty much leaving your chips on the table, and even worse, you're leaving those chips on the table for, guess what, the competition to pick up. Number 5 is really a very interesting one. This is an ingredient that I highly recommend, and very often, before I mentioned that, some of the frustration for accountants is that, you'll go out and you will provide referrals, or you'll provide referrals for people, but they're not giving them back to you. Well, in truth, the way to really meet the right people and to build rapport and relationships with them is for you to become a connector and an introducer. And the reason for that is when you are the connector and the introducer of good people, which is another really important reason that you want to be meeting the highest level people possible, so that you have those people in your network to introduce to others, and your value goes up. When you do that, you are now giving. You don't have to feel like you're asking anything from people, and now your value goes way up, and people are automatically drawn to you, and they see you as at a higher level. It is incredible. In fact, yesterday this happened yesterday a couple of weeks ago. I went to an accountant lawyer networking mixer. It was really a great mixer here in Los Angeles. Collected a lot of business cards, did my follow-up, and I met an accountant and an attorney, and both of them were interested in the hospitality industry. And so when I had my follow-up conversation with one of those people yesterday on the phone, I mentioned that I had met a particular person that I thought would be a great connection for him. I asked if he had met this person, and he said no. I said, would you like me to introduce you? And he was so happy, and then he invited me to come and speak to his firm. So when you give to people, they're automatically drawn, and they see you as a value provider instead of somebody who is looking for something from them. Automatically, your value goes up. So this is a skill set that I really encourage for people to develop. So all of these, the secret sauce is essential so that it's time for you to stop spinning your wheels in your networking, isn't it? Wouldn't you love to just stop spending all that energy and time and effort and really start to make it all pay off? Well, remember I said not all networking is created equal. We want to select and have you go to the right events. And in order to do that, one of the key strategies is for you to be selecting and owning the right niche or the right niches. I know when I talk to niche marketing to accountants, very often, it can be a little daunting, I know, because it seems like if you're going to focus on a smaller slice of the market, as pictured here, that little smaller slice, doesn't it seem like that would turn into less business instead of more? But in truth, you're actually developing a greater expertise and visibility and credibility, and when you own the right niches, all of a sudden you have an opportunity of being the go-to person, professional and firm for that niche market. But it's got to be the right niche market. So there are 3 primary pathways that you could be looking at in terms of how to develop the right niches. Through industries or or what we call sometimes in marketing verbiage, we call it verticals or industries, or through common factors or demographics. So in this case it might be the women business owners market. That might be a demographic, or maybe people who are who live in the state of New York over the age of 55, something like that. That would be a demographic niche market. Another way of selecting a niche would be through people's motivations or desires or key issues in their lives. So, for example, adoptive parents or marathon runners, or people who are transitioning out of the corporate world. These are all different ways that you could be zeroing in on different niche markets. Okay, so I'm going to turn my mic off so that you can.
All right.
Okay, Jessica.
Our next poll question, I will put it up on the screen here, and I'm going to give everybody just a moment to go ahead and answer. All right, we're going to give it just a few more seconds here. Okay. Let me go ahead and close and share this. 18% of you have said that you were too busy to network. 67% of you said that you did not meet the right kind of prospects. 8% that said that you did not get reciprocal referrals, and 7% said that you did not have time to follow up. I will go ahead and hide that, and Nancy, I'm going to move it back over to you to go ahead with the presentation.
Okay, so are we ready to continue?
We are. Go ahead.
Let me turn my mic back on, and let's see here. Okay, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, great. All right, so one thing I want to say about niche marketing, which I think is essential. I believe very strongly that you should really, you should have a top niche or a favorite niche that you develop for your business. And at the same time, you really need to have a backup niche because markets and business trends change. Look at what happened back in 2008, 2009. For those professionals who were focused solely on real estate, they got killed, right? But so if you have a backup niche, it's a smart strategy. In the manufacturing world, very often people will have they will have a core business and then they'll have a secondary business or a secondary business unit. So you want to be thinking about your primary niche market and then your backup niche market. I think that is a really smart strategy. But niche marketing will be so incredibly valuable for you in developing a really smart, targeted, and effective networking strategy. And you'll be meeting exactly your sweet spot referral sources and potential clients. So I want to talk a little bit about networking up. There is no, when I first started my networking, when I went into my own business after my corporate career, I did sort of what I was telling you that most people do, where I started networking locally, and I asked people where I should network, and they told me to go to this event and go to that event, and that's what I did. And I started meeting people, and they were nice people, but they were business owners who were way too small for the business that I wanted to develop. And so I knew that after 6 months of, networking up a storm, gathering a lot of business cards that went nowhere, I realized that I needed to up-level my network, and I started to expand and do exactly what I'm sharing with you to identify my niche direction, my niche market, and to then to do the research to find where was I going to meet the ideal decision makers for those niche markets that I was really looking at. And that's what I'm saying to you. To network up, you always want to be looking at how do I access and connect in with the ideal decision makers. So here, I'm giving you a template that you can use. I use this very template with my clients, and you can use this slide or this template for yourself.
Nancy, I'm only able to see the poll question slide at this time.
Oh, okay. Let me go back. Let me see if I can previous. Okay. So I'm going to move this forward, and what do you see? Do you only see a poll right now?
I do.
Okay, so let's go back. You can't see the connection, the ideal connections page?
Nope, it just shows us on the poll question slide.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll make sure that all the folks on the call do get this slide. It's a slide that shows you how to create characteristics and criteria to make a real take an in-depth look for your ideal prospects and your clients, and really write down the characteristics and the criteria for each of those. That will really give you a much clearer picture about who you do want to be interacting with. Okay, so now we'll move forward. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Our next poll question is going to be on, do you know who your ideal client is? The answers there would be, I have a very clear picture, I have a general idea, and I am not sure who my ideal client is. I'm going to give everybody just a moment here to answer. All right, I still have a few responses in, so I'm going to give it just about another 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. I will share the results. We had 28% that had mentioned that they have a very clear picture of who their ideal client is. 58% had a general idea, and 14% had mentioned that they were not sure.
All right. All right,
Nancy,
great. Well, that's, yes?
If you want to go ahead and see if you can click on Show My Screen again, I think that may be why the slides are not showing for everybody.
Okay.
Okay, can you move that slide forward?
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you see the next slide now?
Yep, it's working.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So I want to share with everybody, if you are not 100% sure and would like to learn more about how to identify the right niche markets, I'm going to be giving you some resources at the end of this program, so that, because I've actually created some tools for that, and I know it's a big challenge for a lot of people. So not to worry, I'm going to offer some resources for you to learn more about that. But now that you've realized and you're looking at the issue of who your ideal clients and prospects are, it's now time to be looking at, okay, now where are you going to go and how to find the right networking venues, right? The clarity, and I want to just sort of give you a specific example. If I want to be meeting real estate developers, I'm going to be going to very different networking venues than if I want to be meeting CFOs. Because they're going to be going to very different networking, or they're going to be participating in very different conferences, or speaking in different locations, or attending different events from each other. That's why it's essential that you want to be fishing where your ideal fish are swimming, right? You want to be where they are. So when I first started working with lawyers and accountants, I shifted my entire networking strategy. I now network with, I network with the accounting associations and the bar associations. I network where you guys are, and you need to be networking where your ideal fish are swimming. So how to find out and swim where they are? Well, it's a connect the dots process. I'm not going to tell you that it's simple. It does take some thought, but it is something. Here are 6 different ways that you can start to do this. Through the research, Google research, thank God for Google. We can do a lot of research. I'm going to show you in a moment exactly how I do it. You can research where they're going and attending events. You can identify, once you know your ideal clients and prospects, now you'll be able to identify what groups they go to and events they attend. How you find that out, you can actually look at trade magazines that they read, and you can see what events and groups and conferences and seminars that are being marketed to them. That's where you go. Ideally, it would be wonderful for you to be speaking to where your ideal fish are attending. So that's where, if you become a speaker to them, gives you tremendous visibility and credibility. And then finally, LinkedIn is a fabulous place. So let's say you want to be networking with the bridal market. There are lots of groups on LinkedIn that address the bridal market. That's where you want to be joining. Just using LinkedIn as an example. LinkedIn's a huge tool. I know that this was covered to a very good degree in a previous webinar that Profit Sense put on. But just from a networking viewpoint, LinkedIn is an amazing opportunity in a lot of different respects. Okay, so here's an example of a Google search to find the right events. I think, as I've interviewed and worked with many accountants, I've asked, okay, who is the exact person, who is the role, which is the role in a company that is going to engage you as an accounting firm. Very often they will, if it's not a very, very, very small business, it would be the controller in a small growing business, or it would be a CFO in a larger business. So I decided to do a search on CFO networking groups and look at what came up. Look at these groups that are specifically oriented to CFO networking. And if you notice, one of them, I was speaking in a conference in Las Vegas, and I just pulled this up for the attendees, and look, there's a Las Vegas networking group oriented to CEOs and CFOs. Perfect, right? So those are the places that you really want to be networking if you're looking to be connected to CFOs. So many of you on the call today would probably love to be connecting with more CFOs and attending those events. Use this as a search term. Okay, and thirdly, now we want to talk about how to land these ideal leads, because, you know, all networking is not created equal, and neither are leads. There are some great leads that you'll be getting, and some mediocre leads, and some, you know, leads that you really would rather not even have them. You'd really like to pass on them. So we're really talking about the ideal match. That's what we're looking for. People that really fit your direction, the kind of practice you want to develop. And in order to do this, to build that, to attract those ideal leads, the people that you really want to be working with, it starts with building rapport. Remember, it's a relationship-driven effort. It's a relationship-driven engagement. They still have to know, like, and trust you to engage you. You could be the smartest, most technically proficient accountant in the world. If they don't like you or feel like they can trust you, they're not going to engage you. It's just the way it is. People they actually make decisions on an emotional level, and they justify it intellectually. It's really an amazing thing. This is really, I learned this. I said, yes, that's absolutely true. People really, they have to know, like, and trust you. In order to land your ideal leads, when you meet people, no matter what, there's that first, you know, they're going to still ask you, what do you do? And you need to be prepared with that, you know, illustrious elevator speech. It is not dead. No matter how many times we talk about it, you know, you still have to be creating an elevator speech that is not boring or will turn people off or is forgettable. Most people just have the standard, you know, I'm an accountant with a, you know, full service firm. That is not going to stand out for people. It's not going to draw them in. And most of the time you're explaining way too much and they're too long. So the idea is to create an elevator speech that will stand out, be memorable, draw people in just 2 very quick blip sentences or less, and 30 seconds or less. Because people's attention span today is so limited. We just don't have the patience anymore. Once you've shared your elevator speech after someone has said to you, okay, what do you do? It's now time for you to be developing this rapport, and the way to do it is you get to control the situation. You get to be the powerful person. Ask open-ended, probing questions about them, and then sit back and listen. By being a great listener, you will be the most interesting person in the world, but you have to learn to ask questions that are really engaging and are not going to result in one-word answers. That's really the key. You want to be asking questions that are conversation starters, and then sit back and do a lot of listening, because leads come from listening. When you listen actively, you can hear the opportunity. Without listening, you cannot hear the opportunity. And to get leads with real benefits, again, your generosity will generate growth. The more you're able to give to people by not just referrals. Most accountants feel like if they can't give a referral, they don't have anything for people. Not so. Not so at all. Send them information that's relevant to their industry. That's why you want to be industry focused. You want to know a lot about their industry. I was talking to an accountant recently, and his niche market, some years ago he decided he was going to identify the right niche for him, and he decided to focus on the construction industry. And it's now become his thing. He is known as the construction accountant. And so you want to really be looking at how you can be generous with your new contacts, because this is what will truly generate growth. You can give them information, you can invite them to things, and of course, you can introduce them to good people. So the key takeaways for today, what are they? Let's boil it all down. I really encourage you to network up versus network down or network across. Spend the time and effort to figure out who your ideal decision makers are and find out where they're congregating, and go swim where your ideal decision makers are swimming. Swim in the right ponds. And if you don't know how to swim, this course is one step, but also there's a lot more information I'm going to be sharing with you. Build rapport. Ask great questions. Listen. So here are 7 tips for rapid rapport building. Ask probing questions, conversation starting questions. Work on your listening skills. And do not interrupt people. Really take the time to listen. Be there with them. Don't look at your iPhone or your smartphone or whatever. Don't look around the room. Be with them. Make eye contact. Let them know that you care about what they're saying. Find something to offer to them, an invitation of some kind. Connect them. Be generous. You know, we undervalue smiling. It's so amazing. Just do an experiment. Take me up on this. Go through a networking event and spend half the time not smiling and then the other half smiling. Seeing which half of the event actually produces more great connections. Smiling is highly underrated. And finally, be the proactive one. You be the one to initiate the what's next step. You take the follow-up and lead the relationship. That's why you need a follow-up system, and I really recommend that you follow up within 24 to 48 hours. In fact, in the book that I've written on networking, Network Like a Fox, I actually recommend my 30-minute rule, which is follow up within the first 30 minutes after a networking event. And I actually give instructions on how this can actually happen. People don't believe it's possible, but it really is possible, and that's how I get so many follow-up meetings with ideal people. And then, of course, follow up consistently. So take a moment and ask yourself these questions. And this is what you can use after this event is over. You can use this slide and use this as an into action slide. The number one, ask yourself honestly, the number one mistake in networking that you know you can alter to up your networking results, what is that? And take me up on working on that, and then BW means by when. Put an actual date on your calendar. Make it your business to put something on the calendar to work on altering your networking process. Next, pick one new event or group that you will attend in order to network up. And then put it on your calendar again so that you make sure that you've got a target date and it's not open-ended like in the next week or two. That's too vague. You need a by when. And number 3, select 3 ideal connections that you've made. Maybe you've gotten their business cards, you met them at a networking event. Follow up with them after this webinar and put it on your calendar by when you're going to actually reach out to them. It doesn't matter how long ago you followed up with them, or you met them. It doesn't matter. If these are ideal connections, take action and get back in touch with them. You will not regret it. So here are some resources for you in summary. I've given you a number of them that you can actually go to my website, and a lot of these, some of them are freebies, some of them are for small fees, but they're all these. I have a lot of free information on my website. The 55 Great Icebreaker Questions is a free offering on my website. You can, there are a number of video tips on my website under Network Like a Fox, and you can access them there. You can download a free chapter of my book, Network Like a Fox, at networklikeafox.com. On my website, I also have information on an entire targeted networking training program, which is a virtual program, and it's an 8-week virtual program, and you can access a free module there. So all you have to do is download that. There's also, I have a tip sheet on follow-up, and you can access all of this at my website at thebusinessfox.com. So there's plenty of free information, also on my blog, tons of stuff on how to do, I even have a blog post for you about how to create the ideal business card. And so I think we've come to the time on our webinar when we might want to open this up to questions. Jessica?
We do. Thank you very much, Nancy. Before we get to questions, if you wouldn't mind getting to the very end and showing the resources pages. I believe it's slide 134 and then 135.
Okay, let's see. Let's see.
And while you do that, I'm going to go ahead and go through the last poll question of the day. I'm going to put that up on everybody's screen now. Nancy, if you could turn your mic down, please. Okay, the last poll question of the day would be, would you be interested in learning how ProfitSense can help you with lead generation? And I'm going to go ahead and give everybody just a minute here. Okay, we still have some answers coming through. I'm going to give it just a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that. Okay, and Nancy, did you have it on the resources slide? The very last two slides that you had set up?
I'm trying to access them, Jessica, and I can't, let's see. Oh, let's see if I can do it this way. Hang on a second.
It'll be the second to the last one.
Nope, I can't access them. Oh my goodness. Previous.
Okay, that's okay. If you want to go ahead and turn your audio down.
My audio down?
Your microphone. And I'll go through, and we'll just go back and forth, and I have some questions here for you that I'm going to go ahead and ask in the few minutes that we left, and then everybody else, I will go ahead and get the polls out to you. We do have two slides there, one that has some resources with a white paper that goes along with today's webinar, and then there's a couple other links on there as well, and those will be at the end of the slides that I'll send out in a follow-up email through PDF. All right, Nancy, so one of the first questions is, what are the best types of networking events what would be the best type of networking events for an accountant to attend for networking? And I know that's probably on a large scale given that everyone's in a different area.
Right. I think, okay, great. That is a really good question. So on a general basis, for accountants, I really like the idea of accountants networking. If you are a solo accountant and you have a small business practice, then I do think that identifying small business networking would be really great for you because the business owners will be attending. But what I would really like you to think about is to think about, even within that small business practice, what's a construct, what are the parameters and the characteristics of that small business so that you can identify even more closely the right kinds of networking, because just even within small business networking, the caliber of people can vastly vary. So you want to be thinking about that. So those kinds of events would be, there's so many there, tons and tons of small business networking available in every community across the country. And in that respect, sometimes, now there are two ways you can do that. You can do it as part of as being a regular group member, where you meet regularly with people, and you can also attend more open-ended events. Or two, sort of bigger, two ways of approaching it. But I like to have one of each. I like to be part of a group membership and also attend more open events as well. For accountants who are dealing with bigger companies, I really like the idea of you networking with CFOs as often as possible, because they are the people who are going to be making the decisions for their company about who the accountant is. They will either work with the business owner or the president of the company, but I think that's really a great, so researching CFO networks attending CFO conferences, I think, is very, very good. And I also think watching for the, if you're specializing in an industry or a niche, as I recommended, you might want to be attending very often there are conferences that are there are industry conferences, and if they're directed less at the marketing side but on the business management side, you'll be able to access the financial management of the companies in those events. An example, you know, it was interesting. I was dealing with a colleague of mine who specializes in medical device. He likes to work with medical device companies, and he was pretty much networking, looking for referrals locally, but we found conferences for manufacturers of medical device companies, and they were primarily in the San Diego area of California. He attended, got himself on an airplane and attended and met 6 different decision makers and presidents and owners of those companies, so he was able to really access the ideal decision makers. So again, you want to be thinking about who is the person who's going to be engaging you. That's who your ideal fish are, and you go swim where they are. I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you. That's all the time we have for questions today, so if your question didn't get answered, Nancy, if you could turn your mic off, I'm sorry. We will go ahead and follow up with you after the webinar, and you should expect an email from me that will include a recording of today's webinar, the white paper that goes with today's webinar, and also a copy of the slides. And then I'll make sure to get all of your questions over to Nancy, so that way we can follow up and get those questions answered for you. I apologize for the technology issues that we had today, and I hope that you will join us back for future events, and we'll make sure to get those worked out. But we appreciate your time, and I hope that everybody has a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everybody.